All right. Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Remarkable Coach podcast. I'm here today with Beth Kennedy. My name is Michael Pacheco. Beth here. Beth's mission is to coach individuals that are passionate about their careers to develop resiliency habits that last and recharge them, leading to greater confidence, happiness, engagement, and career success. Beth created the Bennati Resiliency Model to prevent burnout and promote the impact and influence of resilience. Beth, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
Would you maybe just begin by telling us a little bit about some of the stuff that I rattled off in that intro, the resiliency model, a little bit about your coaching, kind of where you're at and what you're about?
Sure. So I've had my business a little over 25 years, and the resiliency came from kind of a career, my first career, which was a school counselor. And I loved it. I thought I would be retiring. And about year 9, I went down what I call the burnout escalator. And I was really fortunate at that point to get a really lucky gig of doing career counseling at the Gillette company. Mm-hmm. And I was there for 16 years, and I developed a internal career coaching program, lots of career classes. And what also developed was this model, the Bennati Resiliency Model. And it's named after my father, Richard Bennati, who was this incredible entrepreneur. He's passed away, but there are 5 areas. So hopefully throughout the show, I can kind of share some of the areas, but it's something that I do with all my clients. As my clients will say, I live it. And it's really part of the reason I think my business is so successful.
That's great. How did you, okay, so that's kind of talks about how you got into it a little bit. You started out as a career counselor, and then you went through, what did you say, the burnout escalator?
Yeah, I went down what I call the burnout escalator. And
I may have been on that one once or twice.
And I'm very grateful. My book came out 2 years ago, which is called Career Recharge. And through this pandemic, it's been really amazing for me to be able to offer that to many organizations, many individuals, where I take people through these 5 key areas. Which I learned from my clients. The story is the Gillette company was merged with Procter & Gamble, acquired by P&G. And I was fortunate enough to coach some incredible people, and they all landed in amazing jobs all over the Boston area and other cities. And one of the things they said to me was this model, this crazy model that I use these 5 areas with them, which is well-being, self-awareness, brand, connection, and innovation. Mm-hmm. So they kind of became my experiential research. And I continue to use it. Now I'm mostly in the science pharma field. And I was really lucky to have 2 scientists that said, you need to get this word out. So the model got formally trademarked about 5 years ago. And now it's just part of my entire business.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So for me, I love the idea of resiliency and kind of really focusing on that. I grew up playing ice hockey. I love, cowboy culture. So it's all about kind of this idea of grit and resilience. I love that. So why don't we, before we get into the resiliency model, tell us a little bit about who are your clients? Who do you work with this resiliency model? Are you a leadership coach, right?
Yeah, I'm a leadership coach, and I work with leaders in all different industries, but primarily scientists and doctors that are curing cancer and rare diseases all over the world. Mm-hmm. And that has been my niche for about the past 10 years. And they are so passionate like me. My mission is to prevent burnout for professionals. Mm-hmm. Their mission is to cure these incredible diseases. I've been working with scientists involved with COVID, so it's been super exciting. Mm-hmm. And they just care so much about their career that, they're on that workaholic tendency. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for them to kind of have those boundaries. So this was before the pandemic, so you could imagine now. Yeah. But I have clients in other industries that are the same thing. They're super passionate. They work too much. And we hear this saying, I want to have it all. They want to have it all. So I always say to people, you can kind of have 80%, but you can have a really thriving career and a really thriving personal life. My background also is I am a licensed marriage family therapist, even though I practice as a leadership coach.
Uh-huh.
So I dive into those areas a little bit with my clients as well.
That's great.
So yeah.
Someone said, I think in a previous podcast, that the dirty little secret of every business or executive coach or leadership coach, I suppose in this case, is that you're really a life coach.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's a life coach, no matter what they do.
I will say the only difference is, and I work with and collaborate with a lot of life coaches and refer. The only difference is my brand is resilience, influence, and impact. Mm-hmm. And the influence and impact is like so important for these leaders. Mm-hmm. So I think I weave that a little bit more. And then I feel like the life coaching happens at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. That totally tracks.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the resiliency model. Where does it start? I see there's on your website, there's a little circle here with the 5 sections.
There's a little circle. And the funny, interesting piece is what I've learned over the years is I do benchmarking with all my clients to find out where they fall in those 5 areas, mm-hmm. because you do not necessarily need to start at the beginning. There are some people like you might be fabulous at well-being. I know you have dogs. You probably take them for a lot of walks. We know the research from animals, what it does to the brain, produces all those good brain chemicals. So I might be working with you and your well-being is just fabulous. Mm-hmm. So then it's like, okay, let's focus on self-awareness. So for self-awareness is an area, something we hear a lot about during this pandemic, and that's what's our purpose. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big believer in we all need to pause and think about whether you have the biggest corporate job or whether you're a technician, what is the difference you're making every day? Mm-hmm. And then I'm a big believer in understanding kind of how we're hardwired and our personality type. And it doesn't matter what instrument you use, but just to be aware of that piece so that you can flex and be your best. Mm-hmm. So that's a big part of my mission is having individuals show up, be resilient, but be their best. So those are the 2. So well-being, we all know those things that we've all been hearing a zillion times during this pandemic about, hydration, sleep, rest. So, I in my book, I talk about, some of the basics, but mm-hmm. then I also talk about thinking about the habits. So how do we make that happen? And there's such great models out there, but reminding ourselves to okay, let's pause. What are those things that will help our habits really happen? And I think we don't do that a lot. Those ridiculous New Year's resolutions. It's like, we've seen the research, 82% are gone by 6 weeks later. Mm-hmm. But so a big piece of my model is also diving into what are those habits? What is that cue? What is that trigger that gets you to do it? So that's the first 2 is well-being and self-awareness.
Okay. So how do you work on habits? Every coach kind of has different ways.
So I want to share with your listeners the simplest way that I teach my clients, because I'm all about keep things simple. And you can do it if you're on this, if you're listening on with us, you just make a nice big triangle and think about what's the habit that you presently do that you're super successful with. So for mine, it's the elliptical. So, or it's my yoga class. So in the book, I use my yoga class. So in the middle, I would tell them, write down what you're good at. So say it's yoga. And what's that trigger? So my trigger is it's every Tuesday night. My friend Rebecca picks me up. So those are the triggers. That's what helps it happen. But then what's the environment? What do I create? So it's in my calendar. So it's trigger, it's environment. And then what's that reward? Why is it so important? And it is. Honestly, I'm such a better coach on Wednesday than I am on Monday. When we leave class, both of us are like, that was so great. So we both get that endorphin reward. Mm-hmm. Some of you may have heard there's all these studies where they say, if you don't exercise, start exercising and give yourself the reward of one little chocolate kiss. It mm-hmm. sounds crazy, but it trains your brain. Once it becomes a habit, then we're exercising or put your sneakers on. So I start with what's working for them. Mm-hmm. And then one of the things that I talk about, we all know mindfulness is like the big buzzword these days, but it really does work. Mm-hmm. So I'll say to clients, is meditation something you'd like to do? Do you want to try a Calm meditation app or one of these other meditation apps? And They want to. So we'll say, okay, you're great at exercising. How can you introduce just 2 days a week, 3 minutes of a nap? So we do this habit triangle.
Yeah.
And it's so simple and it works.
Yeah. Do you meditate yourself?
I do meditate. So I use the Calm app, and I highly recommend it to anyone that's listening. Tomorrow gives you a free week if you want to pilot it. And I would say 70% of my clients use some sort of meditation app, Headspace, Stop, Breathe, and Think, Insight Timer. 30% have tried it and have said, Beth, my running and my exercise is my meditation. And I think that's so important for all of us to realize that. For me, honestly, part of my meditation is walking my dog.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I find doing the dishes to be very meditative.
What a great example. I think my husband would say the same thing.
Yeah.
For me, not so much.
Yeah. It's not my favorite thing to do in the world, but when I'm doing it, I can look out the window and just kind of space out and not just kind of be in the moment washing a dish.
Yeah.
That's it.
See, I love that. And oh my gosh, many years ago, I was very lucky to, you probably heard of John Kabat-Zinn has a mind-body stress reduction program. Sure. And I was working at UMass Boston at the time, and I was part of like a pilot program. So I kind of got into it before people really were doing this. This was like 20 something years ago. And what I realized was it's like anything else. You do it, it works, but it can fall off. And then all of a sudden, 10 years ago when mindfulness was the big buzz again, I got back into it. And again, now for me, it is a habit. And the cue that I use, if I go to my little triangle, is I come down to my office. Before I go on my laptop, I sit on the couch that's right there. I put my app on, I put my speaker on, and I do it. So before I enter this, area of it's time to get things done, I give myself that little gift every morning.
Yeah.
So.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that, so for me, meditation, for example, is something that I'll make it a habit for 3 months, and then I won't do it for like 6 weeks, and I'm fine, and it feels okay, and it's almost like, so I have a coach myself, and he tells me that there are seasons for everything. What do you think about that?
You know what? I agree. I also think all of us that are trying, so many people want to get into this perfectionist, perfect everything.
Yeah. And
it's so unhealthy. I just think during this pandemic, I've been sleeping an extra hour every morning because I'm not commuting to Boston. And you know what? I love it.
Yeah.
So again, I think there is a season for everything. I think we have to be careful. We're not rationalizing. And that one of the things I always say to my clients, because they work so hard, is the intake output. So if you are output at work and you are doing a 9-hour day and tons of Zoom calls, then what's your recharge intake? So if your recharge is, I didn't even have a lunch break, it's like at some point by Friday, you're going to start to feel some of that burnout stuff going on. Yeah. But what I recommend is, when you can, what's the recharge in the morning, in the afternoon? Maybe it's simple. Like for me, I'm lucky, we have some nice, beautiful walks 10 minutes from our house. So I can do a little walk at lunch. Then at night, do another one, because I'm seeing clients back to back in this craziness that we're living. So it's so important to think about output and intake, and that recharge is huge. But I love that your coach said that, because I agree. And I also want to say meditation and yoga is not for everyone. If people say those words and it makes you feel stressed, oh my gosh,
don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Because I just think anything that's an absolute is not healthy.
Yeah, I think it can be a difficult balance too. So like you mentioned, you want to make sure that you're not rationalizing something away, but at the same time, I find myself walking this delicate line between rationalizing it away and beating myself up over it.
Right. And that's
like you said, like we're trying to be perfectionist. I should be doing this. I should be doing this. Why am I not doing it? Ugh.
Yeah. And we have to watch out for those gremlins and saboteurs, because they don't bring out the best in us.
For sure.
And it's like, but if you think about it, intake and output, and you're already saying walking your dog 2 times a day, it's like, you know what? I'm doing a good recharge. And and how are you? I always ask my clients, 0 to 10, how are you feeling during, today? And if you're saying, Beth, I'm feeling like an 8, keep doing what you're doing. Because I just don't think it is. I think it's one of the things I love about my model is it's flexes at the end of every chapter. People pick a strategy for them. It's not like you should have to do this. This has to be your time management strategy. I feel like for all of us, it's different. You and I, my dog story is funny. My daughter asked 10 years to get a dog, and I said no for 10 years. And 4 years ago, I broke down and said yes. Now I can't imagine not having one. But so again, it's these things where you have to be careful what you say no to and what you say yes to. And sometimes you can get this incredible surprise. And my dog Maple has been the best recharge during this, pandemic we're in. So that would be in any book.
Yeah. I love the concept of intake and outtake, because that really allows you to keep focused kind of on your ideal outcome, right? What are you trying to achieve with this? It's not the means, it's the end that you're working for. So if you're getting the result that you're trying to get, then don't beat yourself up over not doing what somebody wrote about in the latest book that's a top seller right now.
Right. It's just like, and I'm sure you see this as well as I see it, people with all these like goals that are like high in the sky. And at the end of the day, I always say to people, what's your system to accomplish those goals? If you're going to be all stressed out and you have to work 7 days a week, is that really what you want? Or do you want to be working 5 days a week? I always tell my clients maybe 1 or 2 hours on the weekends, because remember, these are people that are very motivated. But at the end of the weekend, you feel refreshed and you feel really like your life matters. You're focusing on what matters most. So I just think that's so important, that goals are great, but we have to be really careful to make sure we have a system and a process. So again, we don't burn out.
Yeah, 100%. This is a good talk. Let's circle back to the resiliency model. I think maybe innovation.
Yeah. So let me go to innovation. That's one of my favorite ones, because doesn't mean you have to be Steve Jobs and invent Apple.
That's good.
It's basically any personal or professional challenge you can add to your life. So during this time, a lot of people are under a lot of stress. Innovation can be so fabulous, and there's so many different things to think about. I just heard some great examples from my clients. One is a personal innovation goal she is doing is she is signed up for an online watercolor painting class at the Museum of Fine Arts. Now she's a scientist. She's, top in her career, and she goes, Beth, I have so much energy now. I'm like, yep, because it's something new. It's something exciting. It's the other side of the brain, and it's fun. Yeah. Another client is doing one of these online star classes where it's through one of the great lectures where they're learning about the stars. In my own personal life, I'd like to share that I just finished. It's called the ACE Board Certification Training, and it is a program to get certified to be on a public or a private corporate board. So it was an 8-week training. And at first I said, am I crazy to be doing this? Why my business is so busy? And my husband said to me, Beth, give yourself this gift. So I did it. I am so grateful I did it. I met 9 other amazing professionals. It was intense, but it kind of kept me on the edge of my seat. And it was so fun to have something different during, again, it's that balancing act of looking at the whole picture. So I actually just posted on LinkedIn that was my innovation goal for this month. And I just passed the certification exam.
That's great. So your husband is your coach.
my husband is my coach. You are absolutely right.
At least sometimes.
Yes, he really is. He probably would say the opposite, but he really honestly is.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Yeah. So that's interesting. I'm glad. I'm relieved to hear that we don't have to be Steve Jobs.
No.
Most of us are not.
No. And I think it's that part that whatever your niche is or whatever your career is, sometimes I work with these professionals that keep getting the same like credentials and degrees and that's great. But I also think we need to ask ourselves why. Do we really need to do that? Or do we have enough degrees and should we just be doing something fun to kind of recharge ourselves? Yeah. Because I think people do get caught up in the next, certification. You and I see that in the coaching field. And again, they're all fabulous. They're all wonderful. But is that the best thing to keep us recharged so we can be our best, you know?
Maybe read a fiction book once in a while.
Right. That I can't agree more. Yeah, and I actually have that as one of the examples in the book, like just like a fun book, you know, because you're probably like me, we're reading all these development books and it's like, okay, press the pause button.
I always keep a fiction book, either a fiction book or sometimes a biography. Biographies are fun too, by my bed. I won't read nonfiction before bed. And that's just something that helps me kind of come down a little bit, let go of some stress, get into a story, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting. My younger daughter is at Eckerd College studying marine biology, and she left on my bedside her book she had to read before she started, and it was about global warming and the environment. And I'm reading that now, and I would have never have gotten that from the library, but I'm enjoying it so much.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What about connection? That's number 4.
Connection, as we all know on this call, it's so vital for resilience. And it's resilience. It's so important to keep moving forward that we're seeing the research about what connections with others that recharge us do. Mm-hmm. If you've never heard of, it's amazing. It's the longest study done by Harvard University. It's a 75-year study. And I can send Michael the TEDx for it.
That'd be great. We can add it to the show notes.
So you can add it to the notes. But it's the most fascinating study where they started in Boston with young, when these individuals were young, and they've traced them now to some of them are 90s. It started off just being boys, but now it's co-ed. And over the years, they asked the same questions. They interviewed, they researched. The final denominator of this whole study is the most important thing in life that equals happiness is connection. Mm-hmm. And we see this, those of you that have heard of Blue Zones by Dan Buettner from National Geographic. Okay. If you haven't, another great book to read, another great video to look at. Same thing, he's traveled around the world. People that live to be healthy and 100, what's some of the common denominators? One is sense of purpose. The other one is connection. Some people will also say red wine, but there's some discrepancy with that. So the science, when I did write my book, the science on connection is unbelievable. But one of the things I think is really important, and I'm very assertive about this when I talk about connection, is you want to make sure that you're with people that recharge you. So we have to stay away from the toxic energy sucks.
Yeah. How do you're working with someone. How do you coach them? It's difficult, right? You've got everyone comes with baggage. They come with a group of friends. Not everyone, they come with family, and not everyone in their immediate surroundings, whether that's family or friends, not everyone is going to help them or be excited about them reaching the next level.
Right.
How do you work with people on ejecting bad stuff from their world?
I know. It's so challenging. I remember learning this maybe 15 years ago in one of my coaching trainings, and I share this a lot with my clients. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So and you and I know that it's so important to model to our clients what to do, not to tell them what to do. But when they share that, that person is really draining me, I share that example. And then I also ask them, can you map out for me, and there's an exercise that we do. Who are their allies, but also who are their champions? And are you making your allies your champions? Because, when I look at my life and some of the amazing experiences I've had, it's these people that have championed me throughout my career. Yeah. That's because I spent time with them. I nourished those relationships. So that meant I had to say no to other people. Yep. So I think we all have to remember sometimes saying no is saying yes to what we really want. And it's so important. Like, I think you said so beautifully, we need people that believe in us and ask about us. And sometimes, like you said, we'll be working with someone and I'll say, you seem really like you're not energized. You seem really down. And it's because of one or two people that just sucking the life out of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I've experienced that in my life before. I'm certain that you have, everybody has.
Yeah.
And it's just it's difficult. I like the idea as an exercise of
Yeah.
just sitting down, with a notebook. I don't have my notebook here, but
Yeah.
with a notebook and making a list like who is out there fighting for you.
Yeah.
And then who's out there who's on your side, but maybe they're not fighting for you yet.
Right.
And who is around you that's not fighting for you? Who's
Right.
not on your side? And
Right.
just
And
having
another,
that list and becoming aware, right? That kind of goes back to your self-awareness part as well.
yeah. And another really easy exercise that I ask my clients to do, once a month is just one page allies, one page influencers, one page champions. So allies are just, those people you kind of know, but they still nourish you. The influencers, when you're with, you just get you're like, oh, I'm learning from them. And the champions, you've already, you want to manage them and make sure you're providing them and keeping them updated on your career.
Mm-hmm.
Those allies and influencers, make sure you're spending time on them. Mm-hmm. Because what do we see happen? All of a sudden someone loses their job and then, or goes through some sad situation, and then they go to reach out to their friends and their friends aren't there. Mm-hmm. So it's just I think again, back to those habits. Yeah. I know it doesn't sound like a fun habit, but there's nothing better than having champions and influencers to have time with. But it's nourishing. It's work.
Yeah. If you're the smartest person in every room that you walk into, you should find some new friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find some influencers, right? Find some people to inspire you and excite you and that sort of thing.
Right. And people that I think, it's really wonderful to have someone who believes in you. Doesn't matter how old you are. So, and I think that so often we just get so involved in our work. Sometimes we forget that connection really needs to be a competency we focus on, and you notice I don't use the word networking. In the book, I call that like the 10-letter word that people don't love. Mm-hmm. If you don't love networking, think about it as connection. Like what we're doing today, we're building a relationship and we're able to collaborate in the future from spending time together. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Networking is such an overused word.
Oh,
it's almost lost its meaning.
It really has, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Yeah. I like connections.
We could just go off on that, but I feel for a lot of individuals that have had terrible networking experiences, because I always say to them, first of all, we have to get rid of the word, and second of all, start really small. So that's the other thing about connection is we don't need to have a zillion friends on Facebook. We don't need to feel like, it's about authentic friends connections. And I think we have to keep reminding ourselves that, because the social media world can just sometimes get out of control.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that.
Yeah.
For myself, I don't think I would not be on Facebook if it weren't a liability for my business. I need to be on it.
You know what? I am right with you. And you're probably like me, where you have some wonderful Facebook stories where I might have been traveling and we posted something, and all of a sudden a friend from 10 years ago texts me and I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have never happened. So I think there are some of these really good stories, but I do think I love the idea of what I've seen with my clients with connections, starting small, and then they get to see the impact that it's had on their career and life.
What does starting small look like to you?
To me, starting small is figuring out in my day, in my week, who can I reach out to that can fill my bucket, and maybe it's one person a week. Even
who can I go have lunch with? Something like that. Okay.
So, yeah, and these days, even meeting someone for let's have a cup of coffee together on Zoom. Yeah. Whatever. But starting really small. And for some of my clients, they're like, no way, I'm too busy. How about once a month?
Yeah.
What about an old college friend just reconnecting with? I'm amazed. College friends, high school friends that you used to have something in common, try it out. And then you just listen to it.
So I love that. And I've been in that position before where I've thought about that and trying to come up with an excuse to simply contact them out of the blue feels awkward and difficult. I'm very, very introverted. I recharge when I'm alone. So I'm not the kind of guy who reaches out a lot like that.
Yeah.
What kind of, how would you do that?
Right. So the way I have done it is it's interesting with the college friends, because before the pandemic, I was doing a lot of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you a real example. I was in San Diego for doing a training, and I knew there was a woman I went to college with, and I hadn't been out of touch for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I emailed a few friends. I got her email, and I just said, "Hey, Heather, I'm going to be in San Diego. Any chance we could meet for coffee? I know it's been a while." And she was like, "How about even better? We meet for dinner."
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one of these things where you have such a good point there. It makes sense. You need to do it when it makes sense. So to me, I was going to be in the city, and gosh, to me, it seems crazy to be in the city and not see some person that I know.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, in a situation like that, the other person is probably going to be delighted to hear from you.
And I want to tell you something, Michael. Now she's like my best fan on LinkedIn. She's always like, "What are you doing next?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And we've stayed connected.
Okay, so great.
The other thing is, and I know I sound like a planner because I am a planner because it's just how I do my coaching. But one of the things I suggest to everyone is to have a connection plan and keep it really simple. The first of every month, either have a spreadsheet, or I use an old-fashioned ARC notebook from Staples. Mm-hmm. The first of every month, I think about the month, who is one or two people I need to connect with. I put it down on my list, and then I email them. And I've been doing that throughout this entire time that we've all been working from home. Okay. And again, it's my trigger, my cue is the first of every month. Who can I connect with? And you know what? Some of these people now we meet with regularly. Some of these people I'm like, "Oh, you've changed a lot in 5 years, but I enjoyed meeting with you." So I think I work with a lot of clients that are introverts. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I say is keep it small, but keep it comfortable and make it happen. Because as an introvert, you know this better than me, when there is that nice connection, if you find that right energy, that you could end up being friends forever.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. This is great. Yeah, I'm glad we can spend a little extra time on the connection part of it. I think it's apropos of the times with COVID and whatnot. So I think that's wonderful. But let's circle back to the model and talk about brand. This one fascinates me. How do you weave that into everything?
Yeah. So the one thing I want to share is that one of the things I found when I started teaching the model was a lot of people came up to me, a lot of resilience, other individuals on resiliency, and they said, "Beth, I never heard of a personal brand being part of resilience." And I actually think it's one of the most important pieces all of us have to do to be resilient. Because I think the piece to remember about resilience is it's not about working so hard that we fall apart and we're exhausted every day. Resilience is about knowing ourselves, knowing our limits, knowing how we make impact, and showing up. And at the end of the week, we may feel tired, but we're moving forward so we can bounce back. We're not burning out. And I think that sometimes people think resilience is like the military. I can do everything. It's really not. It's about what do I need to recharge so that I can feel empowered. So for brand, there are 3 key words. What are your attributes? So what are your top strengths? What is the impact you are making? And what is the reputation you want to have? So I want to tell you why this is so important to prevent burnout. In any job you work in, we all know if you're not using your strengths, and I don't mean all the time, I mean 65% of the time, at some point, you're going to start to go down that burnout escalator. Mm-hmm. I've worked with many lawyers. I've worked with many doctors that are going down that escalator because all of a sudden they realize they're not using your strength. So that's the first piece of brand. The second piece is that impact piece. At the end of the week, what's the difference I'm making? And if we're not clear about that, there's a lot of things that happen. If we're not making the impact we need to be making, our businesses aren't going to thrive. But also at the end of the week, how are we feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And reputation. And again, reputation, Jeff Bezos has this quote, what are people saying when you're not in the conference room?
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the legacy you want to have? What are those 3 words you want people saying about you? So I feel like when you think about resilience, that's the work we all need to be doing more of, because if we are truly on brand, then we shine and we spark. One of the things, as I mentioned, that the model was named after my father, who had a moving company called Steinway Moving and Storage in Long Island City. This man was so ahead of his time because he was so into brand. If you ever Google his trucks, they were beautifully painted. He had 100% customer satisfaction philosophy. So I was a little girl and I would go with him on moving jobs and give the men buttered rolls. And people would just he did a lot of corporate work, and they would come over to me and say, your dad is amazing. Your dad is amazing. He just made sure whatever the customer needed, they got what they needed. Sure. And it was all that. Branding didn't even exist then. But these are, he knew how he knew his reputation.
Yeah.
He just had such a legacy. And I just think that for all of us, whether there's a pandemic going on or whether we're out of the pandemic, I think it's so important for all of us to pause and ask ourselves, what is our brand and are we on brand? We don't have to, some people feel like, oh, everyone has a calling to do something. You could be on brand like my father, who owned a moving company. It doesn't matter what your career is, but I think it's so powerful because, one of the things my clients often say to me, where do you get your energy from? And I tell them, it just feels so good for me to be on brand. I'm working with companies that believe in recharge. I'm working with companies that believe in their employees. And I'm working with employees that believe that resilience is important. And you start connecting the dots, and it's so energizing.
Yeah.
So
and it's your purpose as well. So you got a little bit of kind of synchronicity there, or synergy, I guess.
Yes. And the exciting part to me is when I teach this to my clients, you can just see their eyes light up, because sometimes they might say no to a promotion because that is not supporting their brand. There might be a certain molecule they're working on. They're just not ready to leave the science yet, but that vice president role is waiting. Well, maybe they'll do that in 6 months. That's a hard decision.
Yeah, it is.
But not everyone is meant, it's a hard decision.
Yeah.
So you've seen the research, money doesn't always equal happiness.
Yeah.
So it's a hard, there's a great tool that I would recommend for anyone on this call that's free. It's called 360 Reach. And it's developed by one of the top branding gurus. His name is William Arruda. And anyone can take it. And it actually is you reach out to over 20, 30, 40 people, and it's anonymous, and they will answer questions, projective questions on your brand. I did this. I became a Reach professional. I think I got certified maybe 12 years ago, and it changed my whole website, because when I got back all my results from my clients, I was like, oh my gosh, really, really, really? Because sometimes it's hard for us to see ourselves, as you know.
Yeah.
So, but anybody can do it, and it's a fabulous tool.
Very cool. We'll make sure we get that added to the show notes as well.
Okay, great.
So you mentioned the first part of there were 3 parts of brand.
Right.
Can you go over those again real quick?
Yeah. So the first part is attributes. And some of you, and I like to call it attributes because depending on your career, your strengths or your skills are a little bit different. Some of you may be familiar with StrengthsFinder 2.0. Some people love that tool. There's a zillion strength tools out there. But the way I do with my clients is I want you to think about 3 words that really describe you in your career. What are those attributes? What makes you light up? And
a little bit of crossover with self-awareness there.
Yes. So it crossover with self-awareness. But the piece that's different is when you get to brand, at the end of the day, it really is about kind of your thumb. I always say it's your thumbprint.
Mhm.
How are you just a little bit different than the next person? So, a great example is if there was me and 5 other leadership coaches, the first thing I'm going to tell you is my mission is to prevent burnout.
Mhm.
I also am going to focus on impact. I'm also going to focus on influence. I'm not sure those 5 coaches, leadership coaches, would say the exact same thing,
Mhm.
but it depends on have they been really clear on their brand.
Mhm.
But the next part is impact. So thinking about all of you thinking about, at the end of every day at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 6 p.m., whenever you end your day, what's the impact you made today? And then at the end of every week.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a powerful question. And I think it's what's keeping our world just thriving is that powerful question. And then the third one is reputation. And this is hard. So, what do people think about us? And, and as I say in all my classes, how are you getting feedback on your reputation? Well, how do you get feedback on your reputation? It's hard. You need to ask people you trust.
Mhm.
It might be a manager if you trust them. For those of you that are coaches, it's your clients. You could do that using the 360 Reach survey. It's a great tool to figure out what your brand is.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, for those of you that are in companies, but doing a mini survey, like if you're on a team, to have that casual conversation. Those days when the meeting's over, when you're walking away, now it's trickier, right? Over those of you that are still working from home, but it's
Mhm.
that casual conversation. Um, Sometimes I'll ask my coaching clients, what worked for you today? What was helpful for you today?
Mhm.
Just to make sure, how from 1 to 10, throw out some of those Likert scales.
Yeah.
How did this session feel to you today?
Yeah.
So
I like
these are hard things, but so important.
I like that a lot. That last one, especially reputation, is how we define brand at Boxer. I think it's what is in the hearts and the minds of your people
Yes.
about you. That is a brand. Brand is not your logo. It's not your colors, not your color scheme.
No.
I like that you're digging deep, and there's it's a lot. It's just more complex than that. That's it.
Yeah. And the most important word I forgot to say, but you kind of just shared it if we were playing whatever that game is where you do the words and you have to guess it, is authentic.
Sure. Yeah.
Is I think when I think about that piece of my model, it's like at the end of the day, are you authentic? Are you showing up to be, like you said, you made me think of it, your true self?
Mhm.
Because that's what prevents burnout.
Mhm.
These people that unfortunately have to put on the colored mask, and that's exhausting and that gets
Exhausting. Yeah,
tiring,
for sure. Yeah.
and you're right, it's not a color, it's not just a logo. It's really taking your feet off, taking your shoes off, putting your feet in the sand and saying to yourself, am I really on the right path? And these are hard questions.
And I think, yeah, it is that, and I think it's a practice. Branding is a practice. It's
Yes.
not. It's not a thing that you just do and then you've done your branding. It's a
Right.
practice. You practice it day in and you practice it day out.
I'm so glad you said that, because often people will say to me, like, what is the magic of being an entrepreneur?
Mhm.
And I'm like, you know what? There isn't one magical piece, but
Mhm.
it is really operating, being very authentic and having a practice that you really believe in.
Yeah.
And for me, it's, connecting on these 5 areas. But
Mhm.
I love that word practice, because I do think, and you can tell me if you what you think, but I do think too many people are looking for this quick, immediate fix,
Of course.
and it's so
That's why.
sad.
That's why. That's why so many people think you can get branding on, Fiverr for $20, and you get a logo and you get a color scheme and you get,
Right?
here's the fonts that you should use. Here's a business card designed for you. There, you've got your branding. No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
No. Yeah.
You've got brand assets at that point.
Right.
Very,
Exactly.
very different things.
Yes. Very good point.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is great. I love this conversation. So So we've talked about the 5 different parts of the model:
Yeah,
self-awareness, well-being, innovation, connection, and brand.
you're
Um,
good.
let's and we've kind of gone into detail on each one.
Yeah,
Can you speak a little bit to how the 5 of them kind of work together to
yeah,
really truly like keep people stoked on life and
yeah,
what they're doing?
yeah. So what I want to share is the next thing that I do with all my clients, and it's called the Friday Five. So 5 areas in the model. It only takes 5 minutes. And if we were in a live class right now, I tell you, I know I told you to turn off your iPhones, but take them out right now. And I tell people to pick 5 minutes on a Friday. So is it when you have your coffee or your tea in the morning, or is it when you 4 o'clock, or some people find by 2 p.m. on Fridays meetings start to go down,
Hmm.
and you put in your iPhone or in your Excel spreadsheet, whatever's going to beep at you,
Hmm.
Friday 5. And what you do you set your timer for 5 minutes, and you
Hmm.
ask yourself these 3 questions. The first one is, what were my wins in resilience this week? So it
Hmm.
might be, and you and I could do it right now. It could be like, wow, well-being. You know what? Actually, I did pretty good job exercising. I did yoga. I did some meditation. And brand, I actually did a new fun post on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
So that would be like my number one. But then
Hmm.
question number 2 is, what area of resilience do you want to focus on for next week? So
Hmm.
this fits in with this whole idea of habits. If we don't have a process, we're going to all be reading 27,000 self-help books, but nothing happens. So number 2 is, okay, shoot, that innovation. Okay, I just took that board certification class. I'm just putting it out there. I need to update my LinkedIn profile. I need to update my resume. So number 2 is, what is your goal? So that's what I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile. Number 3 is, when and how are you going to do it?
Quick question for number
Yes,
2.
yes.
Should number 2 be specifically focused on implementation and execution, or can it be a theoretical goal? Or
So,
like,
so number two is specifically, what is that specific resilience area that you want to focus on specifically, and what is it? So you have to be specific. So mine is, number 2 is brand, update my LinkedIn profile with my new designation.
got
So
it.
you want to go back to being super specific, but you can see, Michael, this takes less than 5 minutes.
Sure.
And then number 3 is, how are you going to do it? So if it's, everyone's different, but for me, some people will say, no, I'm doing it right now. It's Friday. But for me, it's like, I have to schedule it in. So I schedule it in.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my book, I offer this as a PDF for free. People can download it. And then you have a PDF, a live PDF that you can do every Friday. Some people love to have that. But that's where all the dots connect. So we have the formula.
Yeah.
And what my clients tell me, and I found for myself, is kind of what you said in the beginning too. Everything's connecting. It's always different every week.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
we might have a great well-being week, but then the next week might be really crappy. And it's like, you know what? But my win was in connection. I met with my neighbor and we had coffee together. So we also know, by number 1, when we celebrate the wins, we're producing the really good dopamine, the really good stress, not the stress hormones, the really good brain hormones, so that we get energized. So that's why we start with the win.
Yeah, you're stacking evidence for success in your life.
Yes. Yeah.
I like that. You've almost got like a why, what, and how framework.
Yeah.
The question number 1 is your why. It gets you excited, it gets you inspired and enthusiastic and ready to start the next week.
Yes.
And then question 2 is, what are you going to focus on? And question 3 is, how are you going to get it done?
That was perfect. Yes, exactly. And you know what's exciting about it is it's so simple.
Yep.
Like there's all these things out there that are so complicated. And I always say to people, in 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, you can make whatever you want to work on, you make that happen. Mm-hmm. And I think we're all in times where some people are just having bad weeks. Like I said, you know what? You have a bad week. Get through it. Don't do your Friday 5 and wait till next Friday. It pops up every Friday. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. If you've got Let me know if you decide to do a Bennati Resiliency Model certification, and maybe I'll get certified and teach it myself.
I want to tell you something. I'm really thinking about doing that for next year.
Good idea.
Yeah. But the other thing I'm doing is there's very limited research on using resilience to prevent burnout, some of these areas. Mm-hmm. So I am going to be launching on LinkedIn. If any of your listeners would like to take this assessment for free, they will get a recharge resource list that I have compiled, and it includes resources for every area of the Bennati model, well-being, self-awareness, brand connection, and innovation. They're all free resources. So I've worked on this for actually years. Mm-hmm. And you will get that. It's just like my thank you for taking the time. The survey will only take like 3 or 4 minutes. It was designed by me and 2 scientists that I work with from the research and design area. So I'm super excited to be launching that on LinkedIn. And people can find me at Beth Kennedy, leadership coach. So I would love to be able to connect with people through LinkedIn.
Love it.
Please mention that you listen to the show, because I only connect with people that explain to me how they know me. Authentic connections. It's not a numbers game. So I know I'm telling everyone to connect, but again, even with LinkedIn, I may be different than most coaches out there. I only connect with people that have introduced themselves and explain why we're connecting, because I want to have a pool of people that I can reach out to for things like this little experiment I'm doing with my resource.
Well, I think, as you explained earlier in the podcast, connection is important for you.
Yes.
All right, Beth, that's wonderful. You also mentioned to me earlier that you have a newsletter called Spark Success.
Yes. So thank you. I wanted to share to all our listeners that on my homepage, which is bethkennedy.com, every month I put out, it's a quick one-pager called Spark Success. It has 3 strategies every month to enhance your resilience. It offers a 1-minute video and a quick little other resource for my readers, and it's available right away. So you can just go to bethkennedy.com, and it's called Spark Success. And I often feature some of my clients' success stories because, as you can tell, I get super excited and I want to feature them, some of the great stuff that they've been doing with resilience.
Love it. So bethkennedy.com. Beth, is there anywhere on social where people can find you as well?
Yes.
LinkedIn,
so
of course.
On Twitter, I'm Coach B. Kennedy, and my business Facebook page is Bennati Leadership Development. My number one, I would say, social media is LinkedIn. I'm very active. I do a recharge video once or twice a month. I call it the Recharge Challenge. And I just encourage people to think about those little things you can do to recharge. And then again, yes, Twitter, my Facebook page.
Perfect. Guys, for those of you listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, I strongly encourage you to go and check out the video on YouTube. Beth is so excited. She's doing a little shimmy in her chair as she's talking. It's wonderful to see. Sorry, Beth, had to call you out on that.
That's right. It's so funny. I teach a lot of Myers-Briggs, so I always tell, and I told you I mostly work with a lot of introverts, and I say, you'll always can tell I'm the extrovert, because even when I try to keep my hands down, I can't. My husband's an introvert, and I think the reason why I enjoy coaching introverts so much is it is true that opposites attract, and I think we can really balance each other out with the energy.
Yep.
But it is so funny, even when I'm in a whole room of scientists, I have to meditate extra long so I'm not overly excited, because I don't want to stress them out.
I think it's refreshing.
But I really do love what I do. And I really do think that in today's world, we really have to all pay attention that work is important, but we have to make sure we're taking the time for that input. Whether it be small little things for our well-being or connecting with others, listening to podcasts. What a great recharge. Yeah. What a great recharge.
Doing the dishes, walking the dog, washing the dog, maybe washing the dog.
Yes. Especially if your dog lets you wash her.
Right,
you
Beth,
have more patient dogs than we do.
Yeah, well, Perhaps.
Yep.
To be determined.
Mhm.
Beth, I want to be respectful of your time. We're coming up on the top of the hour here.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation. I love the resiliency model that you've come up with. I love that you've worked brand into that. And I love that you've worked connection into that. Just how deep you go with brand, I think is really special. I think it's really important. And I love that you're getting that message out there. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. And it was really fun to be able to connect the dots on a lot of things, especially the importance of practice, and, how important brand is. Don't expect it to happen overnight, to really that it is a process. And the other piece I think we both probably really share strongly is how important it is to be authentic for whatever success you want. And that's where all the great stuff ends up coming out of. So thank you. It was really fun to meet you today and to be on your show.
Thank you so much, Beth. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.